So I'm sitting here with Mirna, the Mirnavator, the one and only Mirnavator, and it's great to have you here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of the Refuel conference.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure it's been to hang around you guys and to, just to feel your energy. We need energy these days.
Thanks. I know it was, I know we juggled around a lot of the travel plans and, COVID's shutting down most of the country. So we kind of snuck you in, and I feel super blessed to have you here. So it's awesome.
It's really great to be here. So thank you.
So I know you're known for being an ultra runner. That's one of the many things you're known for. But I'd love to get a sense of how many ultra races you've done.
I've finished 14 ultra marathons, anywhere from 50K to 100K. I've started many more. But sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes, you get injured. Sometimes you're too tired. Sometimes it's just not your day. But the ones that I finished add up to 14.
What was the hardest out of all of them?
Oh, gosh. All of them come with their own unique challenges. But I think probably the hardest one was not even my longest one. The longest one was 100K. I mean, it was pretty hard. It was, I hallucinated in the middle of it. I thought, herd of javelinas was out to get me. My headlamp went out. But, physically, it was okay. But I would say probably one of the hardest ones was this race called the Georgia Jewel. And I've done it twice. And the first time, it's a 35-mile race in the mountains. And I don't do a whole lot of research before I do a race, which is probably not a good thing. But I also like surprise. So I get to the race, and it's mountain after mountain after mountain. It's wet. It's rainy. It feels like it's never going to end. And it takes me 13 hours and 22 minutes. And I'm chafed everywhere. It rained the entire time. There's this place called the Rock Garden, which maybe sounds like it's a nice and beautiful place, but it's just a bunch of boulders, slippery boulders that you have to traverse for like a mile, and it's really awful and treacherous. But you get through it twice because you got to come back down. 13 hours and 22 minutes, really, really hard. My body hurt for like a month afterwards, but I went back the next year and did it in 12 hours, a little bit more than 12 hours, and strategized a little differently, trained more. Trained harder.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I did one marathon and had many thoughts about doing an ultra, and I was signed up for a 50K, which because I heard anything that's more than a marathon is considered an ultra.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yeah. Well, technically, if you run 26.3 miles, technically that's an ultra, but most ultras start at the 50K distance.
Yeah. So the 50. So I'm like, I'm going to be an ultra runner because now I can say I was a marathon runner because I ran one, but it was unfortunately canceled because of COVID. But I'm still going to do it. That's still on my bucket list.
You can do that on your own without a race. I can help you with that.
I'm going to take you off on that. I also heard you trained Will Smith for his first marathon. Tell me about that.
So it was his first half marathon, and it was a totally crazy. It is a totally crazy story. I was on a plane traveling to a speaking engagement, and my publicist calls me and says, "Hey, read your email," and I get this email from Westbrook Productions, and which is Will Smith's company. I didn't know it at the time. Hey, we would love to invite Mirna to come over and be part of this panel to help Will Smith develop his bucket list for his show, The Bucket List. We're inviting, the best adventurers, scientists, writers, athletes to come and give him a hand in this. And so that's the following week. I found myself at his house. I used both of his bathrooms, which is really cool. I mean, the ones on the first floor. And in a panel of all of these amazing people, suffering imposter syndrome like I've never done before. And, participating in this very lively conversation. And in this conversation, we all have to introduce ourselves. And I'm the last one to go. By the way, he's sitting right next to me. Right? And I'm, I'm acting all cool because in my heart, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't believe this, but I'm gonna just be cool, right? And so it comes to me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna say? But I'm a performing artist, so as soon as the camera's on me, I'm like, okay, I got this. And I said, my name is Mirna Valerio. I just left my job as a teacher, and I was like, well, and technically I don't have anywhere to live, so if anybody can hook me up, and I look at him, that would be great. And I am an ultra marathoner, which means I run 26.2 miles and up for fun. And I'm also a National Geographic 2018 Adventurer of the Year. And so he stops, and he's like, wow. He looks at me, and I'm like, oh my goodness. He's like, whoa, let's talk about this running thing. So what's your longest race? And I say, well, actually, the longest thing I've ever done was just a couple of weeks ago. It was 120 miles, this Trans-Rockies run, 6 days, 20,000 feet of vertical gain. Wait. So you just did that for fun? Yes. Wow. He's like, I think I've run a half marathon. And without skipping a beat, I look at him and say, well, you're going to have to level up. And in my mind, I said, did I just say that to Will Smith? Oh my goodness, who am I? And then he looks at me and says, you're right. I'm going to have to level up. And so that was the beginning of that relationship. So we wrapped up that conversation. I made him laugh 3 times. I wasn't counting. And so, a couple of weeks later, right after that discussion, the producers came up to me and said, oh, you did great. He loves you. You're so natural. You're so funny. Wow, we'll be in touch. And of course, I'm like, yeah, right. You're not going to be in touch. This was a great experience. It's completely surreal. A couple of months later, I get a call from the publicist. Mirna, check your email. Where are you? You're supposed to be on your phone at all hours of the day. So I checked my email. Hey, Mirna, this is Lucas from Westbrook. We're wondering if you have some time to train Will for his first marathon. And I'm like, oh, me? He can get anybody he wants. He wants me? And I'm like, okay, when is the marathon? Oh, in 8 weeks. Ooh. Not a good idea to, only train for 8 weeks for a whole marathon, especially if it's your first. I said, well, sure, but, it's not a good idea. And so, well, come anyway. Can you come this weekend? So I ended up coming that weekend, and I find myself at his house again. I trained him. We go to a gym. I did a whole physical assessment. I'm cracking jokes here and there. At one point, I say, Will, I'm not looking at your butt, because I was in the back of him just checking out his gait. Okay, I'm not looking at your butt. He's like, oh no. I like it when ladies look at my butt. And it was just this hilarious time. This like banter back and forth, and we got some really good work done. And there was one point where we're sitting on the couch, and I'm going through all of the specifications, and I'm like, you have to. This is what you have to do. We don't have enough time. And it actually ended up that we were training for a half marathon, because they decided to not go all the way out to Italy for his first marathon, but they were going to do a half marathon in 3 weeks. Again, not the smartest thing, but I said, you're not going to have any recovery time. Any sort of rest that you do is going to be active rest. And he was like, well, can I do some things with my wife? I'm like, listen, I'm not going there.
That's funny.
For active rest. And then I kind of lost it. And he's like, Mirna, bring it back. I'm like, okay. And then it was just this really, really cool thing. I mean, I felt like I could be myself with him. Yeah. At one point I said, how do you visualize yourself finishing? He was like, I'm going to finish myself with and he shows me his arms flailing and against the tape. I'm like, oh, not on my watch. You're not going to be finishing like that. And that was so cool. And I hung out and ate the food at the house, because I was like, I'm going to eat at Will Smith's house.
Yeah.
And
you already say that.
Yeah. And so and then we communicated for the next couple of weeks via text. And it was really weird to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to text Will Smith back.
Right.
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm sorry, Joe, I got to take this. Yeah.
Exactly. And so so it was really cool and surreal. And he did his first half marathon, and it was a Havana half in Cuba, and it was cool to have been a part of that.
Yeah.
I didn't make the actual
Will Smith.
I did train Will Smith, and it's on my resume, and because of it, I have an IMDb page. So
that's amazing. So, do you still talk to him today?
I don't. That phone number is probably
blocked.
It was a burner phone or something. So,
I'm sure that's not true, but that's an amazing.
I still say
story.
I have his number. Like, I got Will's number.
So one of the questions I have for you is that when you think about ultra running, it seems like overwhelming, right? And I know you train people like Will Smith for halves, but when you're talking to like a normal person that just wants to up their fitness game or get into it, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, it really, depending on whatever your goals are, it's very important to make your goals manageable. You can have a huge goal like a marathon, like an ultra marathon, but there's the whole thinking about SMART goals, making them specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. Right. And so if you're thinking in that framework, you start to have smaller goals. And so, so that you're not so overwhelmed by that 50K or by the 100 miles or by the 5 miles that you're doing, you start small. You start at a mile. When I recommitted to my own fitness, I started with a mile because that's where I was. That's what I could do. If you have to start with a quarter of a mile, if you start with walking around your block, if you have blocks, if you start by doing a couple of squats in your living room or doing a couple of sit-ups, whatever it is, you start small and congratulate yourself for whatever you've done. Be happy, be grateful, and then try to do a little bit better the next day.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I know when you also started running, you were getting, and I hate when I even listen to this stuff, that people just had negative words to say and about you running, or just like this perception that you shouldn't be running. And I think like that's a metaphor for life, where it's like people want to bring you down, right? What advice do you have for not those people, so ignore them, but people that hear that criticism and take it personally and it affects them? How do you not let it affect you? Because you've done an amazing job with that.
Thank you. It's really hard not to take that stuff personally, because a lot of the time we think those own things. We think those things about our own selves, right? We have that, the negative Nellies and the negative Neds and the negative Nunus on our shoulders, telling us these things all the time. And really, when people say things like that, it is a reflection of their own darkness, right? And so we can hear those things, and we are going to hear those things. That's the reality. We are going to hear people's perceptions about our bodies, about what they think we should be doing, what they think we shouldn't be doing. But so we can hear that, and we can acknowledge that that's out there, but we can also acknowledge what we need to do for our own selves. If it is running, if it's going to the gym, if it's, doing Pilates in front of your TV in your living room, whatever it is, you're doing it for yourself, right? And you have to just get used to the fact that there are going to be voices. I have voices on my shoulder right now. The voices of hey, you don't belong here. You're an imposter. Who do you think you are? All the time. But I don't listen to those voices. I know that they're there, and I do what I need to do for myself.
That's awesome. And you do belong here. You're not an imposter. So, and I think the proof's in the pudding, right? Like, so at the end of it, how many people have done even a marathon, let alone an ultra race? Like, percentage of population,
I think like 1% of the population
have done a marathon, right? Like, so then you take it in an ultra race, it's a fraction of that. So you're amongst that. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
What inspires you now?
Oh man, everything. There's just so much potential for the world to be better, and I want to make sure that I'm part of the work being done, whether it's in my diversity, equity, and inclusion work, whether it's, just showing up to something, whether it's, people being able to see a fat person running, that can be life-changing for someone. Oh, well, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can try that. Maybe I can do a 5K. Maybe I can go to the gym and try to work out. Maybe I can try something new. Maybe I can get on skis, because Mirna's getting on skis and she sucks. So maybe that means it's okay for me to suck too. So there, just seeing the potential in things, seeing the opportunity in things, especially when things are really hard, seeing the opportunity, seeing the silver lining. It's a cliche, but it's true. It's true. Cliches come from truth, right? You're seeing the silver lining of any sort of situation that you're in, and rolling with that silver lining.
Do you read a lot or listen to podcasts?
Oh my goodness, I read so much, and I listen to many, many podcasts.
What's the podcast you might have listened to recently?
I have two current favorites. Well, I have a lot of favorites. But the one I've been listening to the most right now is The Hidden Brain.
I love that one on NPR.
Oh, man, it's so good with the science and the narrative, and it's just so informative, and I feel like I'm in college again. I'm learning all this like brain science and neuroscience, along with like the anecdotal evidence of all of that science. It's really cool. I love the Refuel podcast. I love long form, just, again, narrative, story type where you're really getting to know a human being just simply by listening to their stories is really cool. And I love, wait, don't tell me stuff like that, because it's hilarious. But I'm also learning things in the comedy.
And then what about a book that has either transformed your life or inspired you? Do you have one? I'm sure you have many, but is there one that sticks out? Well,
there's a recent book that I wrote, and it's kind of that I wrote. I did not write a recent book. There's a recent book that I read. It's called Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. And I almost didn't want to read it because it's, I listened to it on Audible, and it's 15 hours long. And I knew that it would be really hard to listen to because it's about race and caste in America. But this is the work that I do. And so I felt like I needed to listen to it. And it is mind-blowing. It's really long, and it's very, very difficult to listen to. Sometimes I had to take a break because of the stories and the anecdotes and the research and the realization that things haven't changed a whole lot in this country. They have changed, but we still have a lot more work to do. And so I love reading books like that, where here's a problem, here's how we're dealing with it, here's how we can be better. And so that's what that book is. Here's how we can be better. Here's how we can acknowledge people and all of their identities. Here's how we can love on people a little bit more to make the world a little bit better.
That's great. So what's next for you?
Oh, man. So I am recovering from a torn meniscus, and then had surgery a couple of months ago. And I am now just starting to train. And I'm going to do Trans Rockies again. That's my goal. I have been invited to the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc in Chamonix, France. So hopefully that will happen.
Fancy.
It's fancy. And then I'm actually not going to do the big race, which is over 120 miles. I'm doing the fun run. The fun run is 40K, just under a marathon, with 7,500 feet of vertical gain. But we have 12 hours to complete it. And it's the fun run for the volunteers and the townspeople. So I'm going to be doing that, taking lots of pictures and, having a good time.
Is that coming up in the near future?
That's August.
That's
and
August.
It's the same month as Trans Rockies, which is also the same month as my first gravel race. I'm a new cyclist. And so I will be doing my first big race in that month as well.
I heard you talk about a gravel bike. What's the difference between a gravel bike and a regular bike?
Gravel bike is it's like a heavy duty bike. Sometimes it might have shocks. Most times it doesn't. And it is for riding on dirt and gravel. You can also ride it on the road. It's a little bit slower, or actually a lot slower. But yeah, it's meant for gravel roads. And in Vermont, 50% of our roads are dirt roads. Yeah. So you very quickly run out of paved road, and it is just a way, it's so beautiful. There's less traffic on gravel roads, and I have this cycling coach who says, trust your bike, trust the machine. It knows what it's doing, right? And so I've learned to trust being on a bike on bumpy road and not falling down, and just being able to adventure in that way. I have a new cycling sponsor, and so that's their hashtag, adventure by bike, and so that's what I'm doing. It's really, really an incredible way to move.
That's great. Well, it's a pleasure to talk with you today. You're an inspiration to me and many others. You're doing some awesome work out there, so keep it up, and looking forward to getting some advice on training for my first ultra marathon.
Yeah! I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on.